I have decided that introductions are too pretentious and not my style, so we're foregoing that. Let's get straight to business. Since the Bronco is what I work on most often and by far the only vehicle I have that anybody really cares about, here's the latest on that. After the last video, at the recommendation of some smart guys in my family, namely my dad and my Uncle Ron, I forced fed the Coyote engine some oil. You'll recall in the last one that it seized up. Now, it's done that before in the past, but it always self-recovered. This time, it was locked up good. So I consulted the interwebs, and I learned a couple of the best practices on how to prime a modular Ford engine. Went to Home Depot, bought a garden sprayer, $10. Bought some motor oil, not at Home Depot, 5W20. I mainlined that stuff straight into the oil pressure sender line with that garden sprayer. It was the most glorious sounding thing and the best looking thing I have ever seen. Oil started coming up through the top of the engine. It started coming out of little cam phasers. It started coming out of the rocker arms. Who knows where else? After all that, I tried to turn the engine over, but it was still locked up. And I sprayed this engine down really well. Spark plug holes. I straight sprayed the whole top end with oil. I sprayed it through the oil system. Still locked up. In a fit of frustration, I touched the starter wire to the battery terminal repeatedly, really, really quickly, like a child throwing a tantrum. To my surprise, it worked. We're back in action. It started turning over really slowly for the first half a second, and then it sounded normal. So, I burned my finger. Worth it. The latest that I know, the last time I left it, it was turning over. Now, a couple of revelations here. I've not confirmed this, but I think the remote oil filter is plumbed incorrectly. I've also not confirmed this, but that may also 100% be my fault. It wouldn't be a first. Apparently I have bad luck with remote oil filters. It would make sense as to why it's not getting oil, though. I was going to cross my fingers and just run the engine as it is, knowing that it turns over now, but it was sitting indoors at the salvage yard for a while, and it does have 100,000 miles on it, and it does have this little issue that it's shown a couple of times. So I ordered new main and rod bearings for it. I'm hoping I could do that all from the bottom end. At least that's my plan. I'm going to drop the oil pan and try and go in surgically, replace the bearings. Stay tuned for that. That'll have to be in the next video. Still waiting on parts. Chronologically, after that engine resuscitation, I went to working on rust. Started with the tailgate. I ordered a patch panel from one of the Bronco websites, Tom's Bronco Parts or something maybe. I cut out the old metal, tack welded the new one on. This replacement panel I think is meant to be added on over the existing metal, but that sounds a little counterintuitive to me, so it's not a perfect shape. I don't love it, but it'll work. In its past life, whoever had this car saw Bondo as the be-all and end-all bodywork method. Based on my tailgate findings, I can deduce that the tailgate had large rust holes in it for some time. Holes that were large enough for a yellow jacket, and holes that were there long enough for said yellow jacket or jackets to build 4 or 5 nests. Then at some point Bondo was applied to the holes because, bodywork. And then when I got this panel loose, all 5 of those entombed wasp nests came falling to the ground. So I spent a good amount of time working on the tailgate. I did a rust bullet, rust preventative paint on the inside where all this metal was. Tack welded this new piece up, did some sandblasting. I sandblasted the tailgate mostly out of, I guess, distraction, but I've been trying to sandblast a lot of the body. Not anywhere near done yet, but I am making headway. Sandblasting is a pain only because of the equipment, and my compressor will run the sandblaster fine. It puts out about 15 CFM at 90 PSI, but I found this sandblaster in the loft space of that warehouse that I lived in for a little while. It's a Harbor Freight sandblaster. And I think it's just old. I've replaced every valve, every hose. It works half of the time, and the other half is a mystery to get it to work efficiently. I used one of these back when I worked at the hot rod shop in College Station. Harbor Freight sandblaster, same thing, except we were using actual silica sand, and I don't want to do that here. But that thing worked well. This one works well when it works. I'm using Black Beauty, which is coal slag, I think, very fine grade, so That's not the problem. It's not getting stuck in the tip. It's just a matter of getting the sandblaster to work. Other small stuff that I did, I engineered a top removal contraption with eye bolts and tie downs so I could get the top off, which would then allow me to get the body off of the frame. I dabbled with stabilizing the top. The rear corner braces have come unwelded, but I did a proof of concept weld job, and that increased the rigidity of the back by an order of magnitude at least. The top is low on my priorities, but it does look salvageable, which is encouraging. I test fit the drive shafts for fun. I measured yoke to yoke and sent these out via the interwebs to Tom Wood's drive shaft. I had them in about 3 days. Before that, I tried getting these rebuilt locally in Houston at a drive shaft shop here. I don't even remember the name of it. They said they couldn't estimate how much it would be when I dropped them off. I asked them. They said, I don't know. They called me when they were done and said $1,400. And I said, nope, you got the wrong customer. And they said, after looking into it, yeah, no, these are your drive shafts. Everything had to rebuilt. It's $1,500. So I told them to keep them. And they said, okay, well, we have some good drive shafts here for someone then. And then I hung up the phone. For half the cost, for $700-ish shipped to my door, these were built with genuine Spicer components, and they fit perfectly. I don't like that they're silver, but that's not my hill to die on. Going back to bodywork, the Firewall really bothers me. It looks so holy. I saw another Bronco owner on YouTube straighten this slanty part of the Firewall where the original air induction for the heater or something was. But I knew that I wanted the computer placement for the Coyote in a different spot. Most people put it hidden kind of on the passenger fender wheel well area. I don't like that. I think that's crap. So I wanted to put it in this concave space where the Firewall originally had throttle linkage. The brake master cylinders, I'm using Willwood components. It's going to be a different setup. I think I can get it all inside the Firewall, and if not, there's just going to be like a little blister on the outside covering it up. And the new wiring, I don't need any of the old wiring holes. I have a new harness. I want to run that my own way. I wanted the Firewall to look clean. So the Firewall is going to be one of the last things to go in, and then I'll Raptor line the inside of the car and maybe the engine bay. I might color coat the engine bay. I don't know. If you feel strongly, let me know. I spent a couple of days working on the exhaust. Rarely do things come together and conspire in my favor when it comes to mechanical work, but all at once, after burning some holes in stainless tubing and cursing aloud in my garage, I learned how to TIG weld. It ain't pretty, but it was reliable and, dare I say, fun. Welding, doing some exhaust work. We've got flexible couplings and X-pipe and two, we'll call those things resonators. And we made the stainless 2.5-inch exhaust come around there. Everything should line up pretty well at this point. Exhaust system here is going to be attached probably with some band clamps or a V-band, something like that. We'll go under. I installed that front drive shaft just to kind of get a look at clearances. I can't see that, so I don't know what's going on, but I'm pretty pleased with it. My stainless steel TIG welding got better. It's not perfect, but everything should hold. I used solar flux instead of back purging the pipes with argon. Need to get this twin stick shifter to work. Currently, one of those works, but I don't like the way it feels, so that is going to be a 3/8-inch rod end on both of the sticks coming out of the transfer case, shift rods, and that should do a much better job of shifting. So there's some progress. So these stainless steel headers feed into a custom fabricated, I guess I can say that now, a custom fabricated stainless tube where they meet on the passenger side. They merge over here to a stainless flex coupling. I welded that directly to a stainless X-pipe, and then on the other side of that X-pipe is a stainless high-flow muffler / resonator. I need to weld on V-band clamps that will mount the flex pipe to the header tubing, and that'll let it be detachable. And I need to weld the hangers on the exhaust system. After that, I'm in pretty good shape. I'll probably add a muffler, an actual muffler down the line, because I'm not looking to be loud and annoying, but this will at least get some of the noise directly away from the engine compartment, and it'll be a much better scenario for when it's running. I worked on the twin sticks a little bit. I chopped them down because I didn't like their height, and I came up with a solution for attaching them to the Dana 20 linkage, but it involves some metal work and it's easier with the body off. And as I make this video, the body is currently back on the frame. So I'm skipping around a little bit. But the whole goal with getting the body off originally was to chop the old floor out, to do sandblasting, to repair rust holes, do all that. The original center floor section had rust holes through cross members. It was covered in Oklahoma red dirt and grime, and 50 years of life had taken its toll. I didn't want to replace floor pans piece by piece, so I just bought a whole center floor section. I worked on cutting spot welds and freeing the old floor, all while test fitting the new one in the garage on the car, and cutting holes for the shifter on the huge ZF5 transmission and clearancing out some room for the twin sticks. Because the transmission is so huge, I decided some months ago to add a 1-inch body lift to this setup. I'm usually opposed to such superficial, stupid things, but in this case, it's purely functional because I need to cut less of the floor with this body lift. So I went with a body lift and got everything clearanced pretty well. On a spring day in Houston, after a long day of drilling and grinding, it was time for the old floor to come out. It was held in by only a couple of bolts and a few spot welds. I braced the car years ago, and I added more braces when I was doing this. I'll tell you now, it's not enough. It helps, but by far not strong enough to prevent flex. I'll talk more about that later, but if you're doing anything like this, brace your car more than I did. I'm wearing ear protection, so if you can't hear me, 1,000 apologies. Either way, I think I've got the floor ready to come out. Don't know how I'm going to do it. It's going to come out the front because that seems like the best option, but space is going to be tight. There are little spot welds drilled out, a couple of bolts. Those two 7/16 bolts right there. And this whole thing should come out. Wait, maybe one more spot weld. Right there. But getting pretty close. I think I'm going to do this today. This is it. These are the only spot welds holding the floor in. So with the shop crane and just personal superhuman force, maybe adrenaline, I don't know, I wrestled the old floor out and I began more rust repair to prep for the new floor. All told, from when the floor was free to getting it out of there, it took 20-30 minutes of pulling and getting it out. But I was able to do it. Getting the new floor in took a lot more help. It was a lot less graceful than even that and took even more strength. So I had Diana help me with this. I power lifted the front of this body, sans the floor, while she operated the crane and hoisted the back. Then we drug this whole assembly over to the frame and we lowered it down where the new floor was already sitting on the frame. So there was a lot of awkward maneuvering, strained muscles, a lot of frustrations, but we got it to where things mostly lined up. There's some holes in the front that I assume are to help line these parts up back when these cars were on the assembly line, and it just so happens that I had some scrap 1.5-inch steel tubing, and that fit in the hole perfectly. So these little dowel pins are what is holding everything together, essentially. It's attaching the floor section to the rest of the body section. But because of the bracing, because the car is old, because the new floor isn't exactly the same as the old one, because of the prior repairs done on the car, nothing's a perfect fit. So now I'm struggling to get everything aligned and gapped correctly before I weld everything together. It's really cool seeing it all come together, but it's a big task and there's not a whole lot of room for error. So If you have any ideas, let me know. I'm not really sure where to start first when it comes to lining stuff up. The passenger door striker post was rusted badly, so I cut that out. The rockers were cut out, and I have new ones to go on. Theoretically, the width of the doors should be the same, thanks to those braces, but they possibly are skewed a little bit. The bed is attached by the rear body mounts and nothing else, so it's a fun puzzle. But I'll leave you with this walk around of the whole thing. Here's where I got today, putting the grill on, getting the fenders on to try and get things lined up. Even got the hood attached. Sheet metal's a little rough, but I want to use the original stuff as much as possible, even though it's dented and beat up a little bit. I can get the gaps decent, but not perfect. These door hinges are hard. These are from Duff, and they are removable door hinges. They're really beefy. I like them. You get a shot of the engine here. Good clearance all the way around, but that's going to be coming out, and new bearings are going to be going into that. See a little bit of the inside metal work that's been done, a little bit of the sandblasting. You can see how much sandblasting needs to be done. It's a ton of work. Have new wheel tubs to replace some sheet metal. There's that door post that's kind of a pain. Don't know what to do with that. You go around the back here. Most of this metal is good. Need a little bit of repair. All these side panels to the bed need to be replaced. All 4 of those are rusted out. There's a 23-gallon gas tank back there. Rancho shocks, because why not? That's what I grew up with. Yeah, more sandblasting to be done, really. Just a good look at all that and a good look at the bracing there. This side, they brazed the fender to this back panel. It's pretty beat up. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with that bottom part. But again, I don't want to replace this whole lower section. It's also messed up right here. They had welded the rocker to this door jamb and fender assembly. I think I can clean it up pretty decently. I might replace the bottom of that door striker post. Doors open pretty well. I'm going to need an extra set of hands to adjust those hinges. The front fenders and the tire, the gap on these, it's just how they look with the suspension lift and whatever, but I don't like the original wheel tubs and inner aprons that they had, so I'm not going to do that. I'm going to probably make my own subframe up front and figure something out in that vein. Maybe make a custom fiberglass inner fender shield or something. But that's down the line. That'll be well after it's running and driving. So that's where we're at so far with the Bronco. It's a lot of work, a lot more work to do, but I guess it's a hobby, so that's supposed to be fun, right? It is. I like it. It's really cool seeing it together. It's starting to look like a car again. I thought about throwing the windshield on just to get a look at that, but most of my life looks like sandblasting. This thing is just so beat up from being mistreated in Oklahoma. I'm pretty sure it was sitting out in a field up there, and they used it as a farm or ranch truck and just took it off-road mudding, and there was red dirt everywhere. Think I've finally gotten about all of it out, but the next big steps are getting that floor welded in. Huge shout out to Bolt Depot, where I got my bolts from. I've been using a Linux diamond-edged metal cutting blade that I got off of Amazon. That thing is amazing. And shout out to the random U-Haul dude around here that refills my tiny C25 MIG gas bottle. Those things keep me running. Let me know how you think I should get this body squared up. If you have, smart feedback. Maybe I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.